Hey everyone, Chris here from Real Rideshare Stories.
I'm Dustin from Dustin is Driving.
So today we got a video for you that we probably should be talking a little bit more about, but unfortunately sometimes it's overseen. But this always makes the news, usually at least once a year, and this is how to handle ADA, or Americans with Disability, when it comes down to wheelchair and wheelchair accessibility.
Because Lyft drivers will be deactivated for something like this. Let me tell you what.
Yeah, for sure. So there's an article that we're going to be discussing right now. This is from CNET. Link will be in the description below, so if you want to check that out, then you can. And it's titled, Lyft is going to pay $40,000 fine over claims it denied disabled passengers rides. The move comes after the Justice Department investigated the ride-hailing company for allegedly violating the Americans with Disabilities Act. So there's been some claims against both Uber and Lyft, and a lot of things when it comes down to it is drivers are completely unaware of how to handle ADA, as well as some of the nuances within the law itself, if you are discriminating or not. So unfortunately, Uber and Lyft do not do anything when it comes to the training. They actually expect that drivers just know this information. So it's
because we're magic. We know everything.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That's why we drive for Uber and Lyft.
Yeah. So there's the article we're going to read through. Dustin, I want you to give your thoughts on it as we're going through. I'll share mine as well too, and then afterwards we'll just kind of wrap it up with our final thoughts on that. But it says Lyft has agreed to pay the U.S. government $40,000 over claims that its drivers discriminate against people in wheelchairs. The complaint was brought by the U.S. Department of Justice, which said the ride-hailing company violated the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, a federal law that protects people with disabilities. Lyft also paid damages to 4 people with disabilities who say they were discriminated against. So that's a very unfortunate thing.
Again, but we all know right there, it says who say they have been. Now, this doesn't obviously necessarily mean they were, because we all know false reports happen each and every day, and people will say just about anything to get that free ride.
Mm-hmm. One of the things why you want to have a dash camera, just in case.
Exactly, guys. Exactly, because the dash camera does not discriminate, no matter if you're in a wheelchair or not. It just shows exactly what happens.
Now, it says the Justice Department began its investigation into Lyft after an LA-based man who uses a foldable wheelchair filed at least 12 complaints against the company. He said he was routinely refused rides or treated rudely because of his wheelchair.
12 complaints.
Now, I don't know what it's like for other drivers, because when I see a foldable wheelchair, I've taken even the foldable walkers. I'm still able to take the people because I drive a Grand Cherokee. The only thing is, it's very difficult for those people to get into my car. And so it brings up the point, do you help them get in? Can you help them get in? So it's this fine line, and it's
especially
tough.
With right now, when we're not supposed to be even, touching passengers or anything else. We all have
coming in
masks on and
contact.
everything.
You want a social distance, yeah.
Exactly. So this is like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Mm-hmm. So it's a really hard situation to figure out. What are your comments that's watching this? Comment below and let us know. Also, any stories that you've had or anything, even false reports or anything or allegations against you, comment below, let us know. But have you ever had an opportunity where you had to refuse somebody because of a wheelchair or something? Maybe not foldable, but mechanical or electrical or anything like that?
Yeah, I would like to think that, because I want to see someone tell me that, because I know for one thing, Lyft doesn't own any vehicles, and I don't know any drivers personally or anybody really that has ever had a vehicle that had like a wheelchair lift or anything on it, because who's going to be paying for that? Drivers don't make enough, especially 30 cents a mile and stuff, to go out there and buy a wheelchair access van, vehicle, or whatever to go ahead and accommodate these people. I know over 3,000 rides that I've only had to have one person in a wheelchair, and it was a collapsible one, and I didn't have to help him in. He still had a cane with him as well. You know what I mean? For when he had to get out of the wheelchair, so that way I didn't have to touch him or anything.
Hmm.
But it was easy because I have a Toyota Sienna, so I have a big van, so I have lots of space that I can put it in the back. But a lot of people that have like my Camry back there or something, it's not as easy to put something that big into them.
Yeah. And I mean, it can be tough depending, but yeah, I've taken a couple of people with with the collapsible wheelchairs. And again, that hasn't had a problem. Even the collapsible walkers that they had for like older people, and never had a problem there. But again, I can't speak for other drivers, so I don't know what's going on. But when it comes to the other types of wheelchairs, like the ones that aren't collapsible, I can't do that in my car. And there was one time when I first started driving for Lyft, I accepted a ride, and then the person called me on the way there and said, "Are you able to take a person? Or I mean, do you have the wheelchair accessible uh, lift or anything?" I'm like, "No, I don't. It's just a Jeep Grand Cherokee. You can't put the lift." And they're like, "Well, we need that." And I'm like, "I can't do anything about that." So they ended up having to cancel the ride. Um, but it's like, yeah, there's certain limitations because you don't have the ability to transport them necessarily. So yeah, it's really tough there. But yeah, let's go on. It says several other lawsuits have been filed against Lyft over allegations that it discriminates against people with disabilities. These claims in those suits include people alleging Lyft does not provide enough wheelchair accessible vehicles and doesn't adequately train its drivers about the ADA. Uber has also been sued by disability rights groups under similar allegations.
Which is true, and I can agree that they don't train their drivers. But last I recall, Uber and Lyft didn't have any vehicles of their own,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't really understand on that. They're going to blame them when these are our vehicles. You know what I'm saying? These are the drivers' vehicles themselves. We are independent contractors, unless you live in California now. So that's going to technically be a whole different ball game right there.
Yeah, but they're
But
still using personal vehicles nonetheless. So
I
whether
mean
you're an
that is true.
employee or independent contractor, it's still personal vehicles unless Uber and Lyft start actually, incentivizing people to do that, or to, you know,
Or
hire
pay for
people
them.
to do that. Because I know that they do have wheelchair accessible vans in certain cities. I don't know how it acts. I don't know, like, if they're partnered with a certain group or anything like that. I'm not really sure how that happens, but it's only in a certain amount of cities, so it's not really that much. And yeah, I agree. They don't train drivers about ADA at all. You just sometimes get a thing about service dogs every couple of months, and that's really it. But when it comes to wheelchair and how to handle situations when you're a driver with people with wheelchairs, that's unknown. And I mean, I'm still even trying to grasp exactly how all of it is, because if you touch them, you got to be trained. Can you you know
Yeah, if something happens, I don't want to be liable. You know what I'm saying?
exactly.
We drive for Uber and Lyft. We're not making, millions of dollars here. So if something bad
Exactly.
happens, I don't want to be the one to get sued.
Yeah. So then it goes on and says ADA is passed in 1990, and it's going to mark its 30th anniversary next month. Under the law, all transportation providers are required to accommodate people with wheelchairs. Drivers must also accommodate passengers with service animals, such as guide dogs. Currently, 1 in 7 people in the U.S. have a mobility disability, according to the CDC. So right here, it does say all transportation providers are required to accommodate people with wheelchairs. But how do you do that if you don't own your own, or if the driver themselves only has a personal vehicle that they're using? So how would it be like a wheelchair accessible van or something like that?
Well, you notice the wording there doesn't specify what kind of wheelchair,
Hmm.
collapsible or the
Yeah,
freaking, hover round type deal.
exactly. And I mean, like I said, for me, a collapsible wheelchair, that's perfectly fine and dandy. But when it comes down to even I think it comes down to also the ability of that person. Are they able to even get into my car, because my vehicle's higher up? Like, you have a van, which is probably lower because of it's more designed for kids or even for
Yeah.
wheelchair. But when it comes down to like having a large SUV, that's higher off the ground. So it's very difficult for some people to get in. And then it's like, how can you accommodate that if you can't lift somebody, or if you don't even know how to lift somebody and take that liability? So there's this huge disconnect when it comes to Uber, Lyft, the ADA, and how Uber and Lyft teach or educate drivers when it comes down to it. And it's a really hard thing.
I totally agree.
So it says, Lyft said it had a wheelchair policy for several years that requires drivers to accommodate passengers with foldable wheelchairs. So if you didn't know that, if the person has a foldable wheelchair, you can't discriminate against them. You have to accommodate that. So that means put it in the back seat, put it in the trunk. I know right now with the whole new guidelines, you could probably put it up in the front seat or in the trunk. So just be aware of that. And it said it supports disabled passengers with non-folding wheelchairs by offering wheelchair accessible vehicles in a handful of cities. But again, if you don't have the ability to take a non-folding wheelchair, are you really discriminating against them because you don't have the adequate means in order to do that? And
if you can't do it, you can't do it.
Yeah, but then does that raise the point? Are you in violation of the ADA because you're not accommodating to somebody in disability? It's this weird slippery slope, I think.
Oh, I totally agree. It's like people allergic to animals that have to take service animals.
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation? Like, oh, I'm really allergic to cats or dogs. You know what I mean? Like, it makes me break out. I can't breathe and stuff. And then people get mad at you, like, well, you got to take my service animals. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and then the whole thing is, it's like, why can't, like, I don't mind if I would take an animal or not. Like, I don't have bad allergies or any allergies when it comes to animals, at least. So why can't I put something that I would be willing to take somebody's service animal, and yet somebody who does have an allergy, put that on there so the algorithm can pair me with that person instead of the other person?
Yeah, it'd be nice to have those options or something like that built in the app.
Something like that would be, I think, a much better thing. Where did I go? Oh yeah, Lyft. Oh yeah, so then Lyft also said it's forged partnerships with disability groups like the National Federation of the Blind and the National Association of the Deaf. Blind and deaf do not equal people in wheelchairs, though, so that's what this is all about. And then it says, many disability rights advocates say this isn't enough, however. They say that it's near impossible to get a ride in one of Lyft's wheelchair accessible vehicles, and that people with disabilities are still being denied rides by drivers. So
which could be true, depending on, like you said, how they can accommodate. If they can't accommodate them, they can't do it. If you can't take them, you can't take them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a small girl who can't lift anything, or if you have, say, a baby seat in your trunk because you want to be accommodating to those who may need a baby seat or an infant seat or something like that, then how are you going to put a collapsible wheelchair? You're going to leave the seat there and take it? They
expect us to provide snacks, drinks, wheelchair accessibility.
Yeah, everything under the
happy
sun.
Endings. I mean, dang,
watch out there. In the Justice Department's complaint, 4 people alleged they were discriminated against for their mobility disabilities. Again, if you have somebody who's come into your car who's got a mobility disability, try to be as accommodating as possible. If you are unable to accommodate them due to some issue that you can't get them into the car, that you can't get the electric scooter, I don't know where that falls. I mean, does that fall in violation? Does it not? If anybody has any knowledge on that, please comment. Along with the LA-based man, 2 other people say they've been denied rides by Lyft drivers for being in a wheelchair, including a veteran who lost both his legs in combat. A woman said she was refused a ride because she uses a walker. So
the walker one, I mean, that definitely shouldn't have happened. They should definitely have taken that person. But the guy with no legs, I mean, thank you for serving our country and all, but if I can't pick you up or something, what if you fall when you're picking them up or something and then they get hurt? I mean, you're going to get sued. I mean, that's just right there. And I'm not trained for that. And you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm not a.
And that's a huge thing too. You have to be trained in order to lift people. Like it's a training class that people have to go to. So yeah, it's a really, really hard topic. And I
And what are they
mean,
going to do? They're going to pay drivers to take those classes? Because I ain't paying for it.
yeah, I don't know. But this is, hey, perfect time. Vanture N4 on sale, or if you need a dash cam, which is a really good thing to have, especially in situations like this, because unfortunately, yeah, there's probably some people who are telling the truth when it comes to some drivers denying them, and probably should have done better job at accommodating them. But there's also the possibility that some people are just going to try to use it for their own means because of actually this next paragraph. So it says, in its settlement with the Justice Department, Lyft agreed to pay the LA man $30,000. It will also pay $4,000 to the other 3 people listed in the complaint.
Thanks. So he gets more than all of them, huh?
Yeah. Lyft said it will yeah, it's probably because it was 12 complaints versus the other people.
It's 3,000 per complaint.
Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't know how they came with that, but this is where this is where drivers need to be alert. And it says Lyft will additionally create a complaint procedure for passengers with disabilities to notify the company when they believe they've been mistreated.
When they believe.
Yeah. So there could be some people that are going to use this against just because and false reports and things like that. And yes, I agree that there will be drivers who will be mishandling a situation and probably should have a report against them. But you got to watch out for the people who are trying to be accommodating and trying to do the right thing, but unfortunately can't because of certain circumstances or circumstances beyond their own control. But again, like I said, is that outside of ADA? Is that a violation? I don't really know. But if those complaints are deemed credible, Lyft will refund the ride charges and give that passenger $10 in credits. It could also deactivate the driver after 2 or more complaints.
2 or more complaints. And it does not matter if they are actual real complaints or false complaints. And that is where the issue lies. So now they're going to give passengers incentives as they get a $10 in ride credits plus a refund if they make a complaint. And I don't know about you, but we know when people know how to get free stuff, most of the time they end up trying to do it. I'm not saying those people are gonna, but we all know from normal times when things are, on a normal given, any kind of good day, anything can go bad and anyone can lie about anything.
Yep, exactly.
And right here too, where it says, when it said, when they deem that they've been mistreated, well, what if drivers, some drivers have problems of their own disabilities, and they might not be able to lift people or lift luggage or stuff like that, and riders are going to try to hold that against them. That's just not fair to me. I don't think that's fair at all.
Yeah, I think that Lyft and Uber have to do a much better job at finding out what happened, what's going on, and seeing both sides of the story. Because, yeah, I mean, anybody can say anything at any time for any reason to try to get a free ride. Whether they want to have a personal vendetta against a driver, they could even take it a whole different way. So yeah, unfortunately it happens. And, they're trying to make it seem like drivers should bend over backwards. Like you said, food, snacks, water, happy ending. It's like, oh man. But then, yeah, just to wrap
But just
it
like
up.
you said, that's why they should have something in the app for that. Drivers that are able to and are willing to do other things like that.
Even
they should have it.
like who have been trained. If you've been trained to be able to have that, or if the vehicle is, they have comfort and they have the larger vehicles that they're trying to push for a whole different type besides just like UberX. So they have a whole list of vehicles that have more comfort vehicles that are of a certain year and all that. And then they're going to give the driver a little bit more. If they have that type of accessibility or ability to be able to accommodate people, they should filter those rides out within the algorithm or whatever to make it a little bit easier for people, especially when it comes to if they've been, having issues of trying to get rides before. So yeah,
especially since they say they're not a transportation companies, they're technology companies. So they should use that technology to their advantage and start putting things like that into the app, so that way it would make their passengers happier. And then of course the drivers that don't want to deal with that, or not necessarily don't, but can't deal with that because of their own issues, then they won't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? It would make drivers happy, riders happy. But
it's just like providing wheelchair accessible vans in only certain cities. Like, yeah, if you have, these are going to be large cities. I'm sure it's New York City. I'm sure it's LA. I'm sure it's a few other large cities. But that's the thing. That's large cities. How many wheelchair accessible vans do you actually have to service those areas? And then if it's, what did it say? 1 in 9 people or 1 in 7 people have a mobility disability. So if you're trying to service an area of 10 million people, or around about 10 million people, and let's say you have 10 wheelchair accessible vehicles and they're trying to get a ride, and then on top of that,
it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and then what if they're not out driving? Like, that's the whole thing. Like, is that their own personal vehicle? Are they partnered with a particular place? Again, like I said, I don't know that because I'm not in those areas, so I'm not sure. But let's wrap up this article.
And since we're not employees, they don't know when they're gonna drive. You know what I mean? So they don't know when they're available.
Yeah, exactly. So let's wrap this real quick up, and then we'll share our final thoughts on that. So it says, among its other agreements with the government, Lyft said it will revise its wheelchair policy by telling new drivers not to discriminate against people with disabilities and reminding current drivers about these rules every 3 months. Oh, so it's going to be real similar to the whole service dog thing.
Yeah,
so you're going to get that. And essentially all it is a little blurb in an email that says,
with a picture,
you must take service dogs. So it's going to say, do not discriminate against people in wheelchairs, but they don't train you on anything beyond that. So that's that I see as a problem. And then it says Lyft will also provide the Justice Department with written reports twice a year about the steps it's taking to comply with the ADA. So there may be some changes when it comes to Lyft. It says, we're glad that through this agreement, we will continue improving our policies and making it easier for people with foldable wheelchairs and other collapsible mobility devices to get around using Lyft, the company spokesperson said. Lyft is committed to maintaining an inclusive and welcoming community. Okay, so in this thing, it makes me think that they're talking about foldable wheelchairs and other collapsible mobility devices.
No hover around.
Yeah. So right there, if that's the case, then again, if they have electric or if they have something that you can't fit in your car, you can't lift, you don't have the ability, I don't think that's going to be considered discrimination because it doesn't take the form of foldable or collapsible, where it's going to be easier to get in the car. But again, what is that person's needs? Like if they don't have the ability to get in your car, how can you lift them if you don't have the ability to lift above a certain amount? If you have your own disability that prevents you from even lifting or doing that, plus the training with touching and moving people, if you don't have that, how can you do that safely? Because then it's going to call into safety, and that's going to be just as important too, because if you are just a person, just a driver driving around, and you have to pick somebody up to get them from the wheelchair to the car. And this is not taking the whole coronavirus pandemic and social distancing into account, but how do you lift them safely when they may need specific movements that can put them in a particular way or take them out a particular way, when that person more than likely 99.99% chance does not have the right training in order to do that.
Oh, I agree. And that's why, to me, that's not discrimination. That's called safe. That's just safety. That's being safe for the driver, being safe for that rider. You know what I'm saying? It's better not to gamble with something like that, because we don't get paid enough for this, for one. And for two, that's somebody else's safety.
Yeah. You know, and the liability.
The liability alone,
that's a lawsuit. So yeah,
it's game over right there.
Yeah, it's real interesting. Do you have any final wrap-ups, and then I'll wrap it up?
My thing is right there, guys. obviously don't, don't discriminate. If they have some collapsible, foldable, and they can get into your vehicle, then, of course, take those rides. But if you can't do it, you can't do it. Okay. And this is why we say have those dash cams. So that way, if someone tries to say you did something, dash cam's going to show otherwise.
Yep. I completely agree there. So again, anything collapsible, so collapsible wheelchair, collapsible walker, try to do your best to be as accommodating as possible. If they have particular need set that you are unable to be able to perform because of a particular issue, I can't really tell you what to do in this situation because I'm unclear of it as well. And I think this is part of the problem.
But personally, I would say you ain't got no training, don't touch them. Okay. Yeah. Contact Lyft immediately, or Uber or whatever. Contact them immediately and say, I cannot take this ride because I cannot touch them. I can't pick them up. They need extra help or something else like that. That's your best case to go. So that way you don't get any kind of report against you. Because you heard it, guys. 2 reports, whether they're true or not, and you're gone. You don't even get strike
at
three.
A minimum. Yeah, it says 2 or more. So yeah, it's either way, it's a tough situation. Try to be as understanding and compassionate as you can to any situation. Like I said, those situations though, I'm not really sure because nothing has really ever been, one training has been out the window. There's none. I think Uber has a video talking about it, and that's really it. So they don't do training. Like taxi cabs have full-on training about it, as well as a couple of other things. So like I said, this is a topic of conversation that I think we need to get into, or at least know a little bit more when it comes down to it. And this is something that happens in the news. This article that I found and just read from, there's 4 or 5 other articles that linked in there that if you want to check out and read that link to, there is some things there that's talking about over the last few years. So how Uber and Lyft have, kind of evolved their situations. And this one just happened. This is 2020. It just came out earlier today. But like I said, those other related articles are from CNET as well. So if you want to read through those as well, just to kind of get some more information. But training is probably going to be the biggest thing. And if anybody has any more information on any of this with ADA compliance, when it comes down to it, if you are a scholar or an expert in that particular arena, or you know somebody who is, please comment below and let us know so it can share with everybody else as well. And hopefully we'll be able to give some updated information when it comes down to it. Because like I said, I don't want to say don't do it if it's going to be a violation of ADA, but if you're unable to do it, even though you're trying to be as accommodating as possible, then it's this gray area. So it's a sticky situation. It's a slippery slope. Just try to navigate those waters with as best intentions as possible. And again, yes, dash cameras are going to be key when things come down to it. All right. Thanks, Dustin, for sharing your thoughts on this. Yes, I know that it's going to be probably something that we should dive into a little bit more. But that's the end of this video. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell for notifications so you'll be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Also, make sure to check the description below for other helpful information and tips, as well as this article and the links to the other articles so you can see exactly what has happened over the last few years. And as always, never drink and drive. Always tip your drivers, your delivery drivers, and your shoppers. And we'll see you next time.